I stood there frozen, watching my entire family enjoying Thanksgiving dinner through the window of my son's dining room. Without me. The turkey, the stuffing, the cranberry sauce, all laid out on the table I had built with my own hands 40 years ago. My grandchildren laughing, my children raising glasses in toast, and an empty chair where I should have been sitting. That's when I decided enough was enough. What happened next left my entire family speechless and changed our relationship forever. But let me start from the beginning. I'm Harold, 72 years old, widowed for the past 3 years since my Martha passed. Thanksgiving had always been our thing. Martha would cook for days and I'd carve the turkey with the knife my father gave me. Even after the kids grew up and moved out, they'd always come back home for Thanksgiving. It was non-negotiable, our family tradition. After Martha died, my oldest son, James, suggested we move the celebration to his house. "It'll be easier on you, Dad," he said. I agreed, thinking it made sense. The first Thanksgiving without Martha was hard, but having everyone around helped. I still carved the turkey, some traditions you don't mess with. The second year was similar, though I noticed some tension when I offered to help in the kitchen. My daughter-in-law, Diane, smiled tightly and said, "We've got it covered, Harold. Why don't you just relax?" I felt a little useless, but figured they were just being considerate of my age. Then came this year. 2 weeks before Thanksgiving, I called James to ask what time I should arrive. There was an awkward pause on the phone. "About that, Dad. We were thinking of doing something different this year." "Different? What do you mean different?" My stomach tightened. "Well, Diane's parents are coming and the kids have friends over, and with everyone's dietary restrictions these days, it's just getting to be a lot. We thought maybe it would be easier if you had a nice quiet day at home. We could drop by with a plate later." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "You're uninviting me to Thanksgiving? The holiday I've hosted for 40 years. Dad, don't be dramatic, it's not like that. We just thought it might be overwhelming for you. All the noise, the kids running around. At your age." "At my age? James, I'm 72, not 102. I'm perfectly capable of sitting at a dinner table." Another pause. "Look, Dad, Diane's been planning this for weeks. She's really stressed about fitting everyone. Maybe next year we can—" I hung up. Couldn't even listen anymore. My own son uninviting me to Thanksgiving. For the first time in my life, I was going to be alone on the holiday that had always meant family. The next few days were rough. I didn't answer when James called back. What was there to say? I felt hollow inside, like I'd already died and nobody had bothered to tell me. You know what's the worst part about getting older? It's not the aches and pains or forgetting where you put your glasses. It's becoming invisible. People start making decisions for you, around you, about you, but never with you. 5 days before Thanksgiving, my doorbell rang. It was my grandson Ethan dropping off some mail that had been delivered to James's house by mistake. But he wasn't alone. My 6-year-old grandson Tommy was with him. Tommy ran to hug me like always. "Grandpa, are you excited for Turkey Day?" "I'm gonna eat all the mashed potatoes." I glanced at Ethan, who suddenly looked uncomfortable. "Tommy, remember what Dad said? Grandpa's not coming this year." Tommy's face scrunched up in confusion. "But why? Grandpa always comes." Before Ethan could answer, Tommy looked up at me with those innocent eyes and said, "Grandpa, they said you're too old for Thanksgiving and can't come anymore." His lower lip trembled and tears welled up. "But I want you to come." The words hit me like a physical blow. Too old for Thanksgiving? Too old for family? Is that what they were telling the children? After they left, I sat in my armchair for hours just staring at the wall. Martha's photo seemed to be watching me. I could almost hear her voice. "Harold Thompson, are you really going to let them push you aside like this?" No, I wasn't. Thanksgiving morning arrived bright and cold. Instead of sleeping in as I'd planned in my self-pity, I got up early. Showered, shaved, put on my best sweater. The blue one Martha always said brought out my eyes, and my good slacks. I took out the small wooden box from the mantel where I kept the carving knife. Wrapped since last Thanksgiving. I looked at myself in the mirror. Too old? We'll see about that. I drove to James's house, timing my arrival for exactly 2 p.m. Dinner time. My heart was pounding as I walked up the driveway. Through the front window, I could see them all gathered exactly as I described at the beginning. The perfect family tableau, minus one grandfather. I stood watching for a moment, feeling like a ghost. Then I squared my shoulders, walked up to the door and rang the doorbell. The laughter inside dimmed. I heard hurried whispers, then footsteps. James opened the door, his face a mask of shock. "Dad, what are you—" "Happy Thanksgiving, son." I said, walking past him into the house. Sorry I'm late. The dining room fell silent as I entered. 14 pairs of eyes turned to stare at me. Diane's parents, whom I'd met several times before, looked confused. My daughter Emily half rose from her chair. "Grandpa!" Tommy shouted, breaking the silence. He jumped from his seat and ran to hug me. "You came. I knew you would come." I hugged him back, then looked around the table. "Well, don't let the turkey get cold on my account." James was right behind me, his voice low and strained. "Dad, we talked about this. We didn't—" "Yes, we talked about it. You decided, I disagreed." I kept my voice pleasant but firm. "Now where shall I sit?" Because that's when I noticed it. There was no empty chair, no place setting waiting. They hadn't even set a place for me. The message couldn't have been clearer if they'd hung a "No Grandpas Allowed" sign on the door. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut with my carving knife, which coincidentally I pulled out of my pocket. "I believe this is still my job," I said, holding up the knife. The same knife that had carved every Thompson family Thanksgiving turkey for nearly 5 decades. Diane let out an exasperated sigh. "James, could you please—" She didn't finish the sentence, but the meaning was clear. James took my elbow. "Dad, let's talk in the kitchen." I allowed him to lead me out of the dining room, away from the awkward stares. Once in the kitchen, he turned to me, frustration evident on his face. "What are you doing? We had an arrangement." "No, son, you had an arrangement. I never agreed to be cut out of my family's Thanksgiving. You're making a scene. This is embarrassing." "Embarrassing?" I felt my temper rising. "You know what's embarrassing? Having to explain to your 6-year-old grandson why his father thinks Grandpa is too old for Thanksgiving dinner." James's eyes widened. "What? I never said—" "Tommy told me exactly what he heard. Grandpa's too old for Thanksgiving and can't come anymore." Those were his words, James. How do you think that made me feel? My son's face flushed. That's not what I meant." Tommy misunderstood. "Then what did you mean?" "Because being uninvited from the holiday I've celebrated with my family every year of my life sure felt like being told I'm too old." James ran a hand through his hair, a gesture so like his mother's it made my heart ache. "It's complicated, Dad. Try me. I may be old, but my brain still works just fine." He leaned against the counter, suddenly looking exhausted. "Diane's parents are staying for 2 weeks. They're sleeping in the guest room, your usual room. And her sister's family is coming too with their kids. The house is packed. We literally don't have room at the table." I stared at him. "And you couldn't have told me that? Instead of implying I'd be overwhelmed by the noise?" "James, I raised 3 children in a house half this size. I think I can handle a busy dinner." It wasn't just that. He looked down, avoiding my eyes. Diane thought it might be awkward, with her parents here. "Awkward? Why would it be awkward?" James shifted uncomfortably. "Her dad, he's only 65, still working, plays tennis 3 times a week. Diane was worried you might feel compared." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "So I was uninvited because your wife was worried I'd make her father look good by comparison?" "No, that's not—" "Look, Dad, Diane's been stressed about hosting both families. She wanted everything perfect. And last year you kept telling those old stories about Mom and the time the turkey caught fire and your mother's stories. Our family history." My voice was quiet now. "That's what Thanksgiving is about, James. Remembering, sharing, passing down traditions." A small voice came from the doorway. "I like Grandpa's stories." We both turned. Tommy stood there, a dinner roll clutched in his hand, watching us with solemn eyes. "Mom says Grandpa's chair's in the garage," he volunteered. "And we have extra plates in the cabinet." James and I looked at each other. I could see the struggle on his face, embarrassment, guilt, and something else. Fear, maybe. The fear every middle-aged child has of seeing their once strong parent grow older. But I wasn't gone yet. Not by a long shot. Tommy walked over and took my hand. "Come on, Grandpa. I saved you some turkey. It's the good part with the crispy skin." And that's when it hit me. This wasn't really about space at the table or Diane's parents or even about me being too old. It was about my son not knowing how to navigate this new reality. His father aging, his wife's priorities, his own children's needs. He was stuck in the middle, trying to please everyone. I squeezed Tommy's hand. "Thank you, buddy. I'd love some turkey." I looked at James. "I'm not leaving, son. I'm having Thanksgiving dinner with my family. Now we can make this awkward, or we can act like the adults we are and find a solution. Your choice." James stared at me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "I'll get your chair from the garage." What happened next surprised even me. By the time James returned with my chair, Emily had already set a place for me at the table, right between Tommy and herself. Diane's face was tight with forced politeness, but her parents were actually quite welcoming. "Harold, it's been too long," Diane's father, Richard, called out. "Come sit down, man. I was just telling everyone about my new knee. Titanium. Want to see the scar?" I couldn't help but smile. If they'd been worried about me seeming old next to Richard, they needn't have bothered. He launched into a 15-minute monologue about his surgery that had the children squirming and the adults checking their watches. But the real turning point came during dessert. Tommy, mouth smeared with pumpkin pie, asked me to tell the story about the turkey fire. Before James or Diane could intervene, I began. "Well, it was Thanksgiving 1987 and your grandma Martha decided to try a new recipe." To my surprise, Diane's mother leaned forward, genuinely interested. "Oh, cooking disasters make the best stories. One year I forgot to take the bag of giblets out of the turkey. The plastic melted everywhere. And just like that, the ice was broken. We started trading holiday disaster stories. Richard's deep-fried turkey experiment that nearly burned down their deck. Emily's first attempt at cranberry sauce that was so tart it made her children cry. James's college Thanksgiving where the oven in his apartment stopped working halfway through cooking the turkey. Laughter filled the room. Real laughter, not the strained politeness from earlier. I looked around at my family, at the new faces blended with the familiar ones, and felt a warmth that had nothing to do with the excellent bourbon Richard had produced from his suitcase. Later, as the evening wound down and the children started getting sleepy, James found me in a quiet moment. "Dad, I'm sorry, I handled this all wrong." I nodded. "Yes, you did. I should have just been honest about the space, about everything. Son, I'm old, not fragile. I can handle the truth. What I can't handle is being pushed aside because you think I can't cope with reality." He looked at me thoughtfully. "You know, when I was a kid, you seemed invincible. It's hard to see you differently. I'm still me, James, just with more miles on the odometer." That made him smile. "You're spending the night. No arguments. The kids want you here for leftover sandwiches tomorrow." As I lay in the hastily prepared sofa bed that night, apparently there really wasn't room in the guest quarters. I thought about what had almost happened, how easily I could have been cut out of my family's life, not all at once, but gradually. This Thanksgiving, then Christmas, then birthdays, a slow fade into irrelevance. By standing my ground, by refusing to be invisible, I had changed something important, not just for this holiday, but for how my family would see me going forward. The next morning, I was awakened by Tommy bouncing onto the sofa bed beside me. "Grandpa, Mom says you're making pancakes. The special ones with the faces." I heard Diane's voice from the kitchen. "Tommy," I said to let Grandpa sleep, but I was already sitting up, ruffling my grandson's hair. "Pancake faces coming right up, Chief." In the kitchen, Diane was already pulling out ingredients. "Dad," she said, the first time she'd ever called me that instead of Harold, "I thought maybe you could show me how to make them. Martha's recipe. For the kids." And in that moment, I knew. I wasn't too old for Thanksgiving. I wasn't too old for my family. I was exactly where I belonged. What I learned from this experience is something I want to share with all of you. Don't let anyone tell you you're too old, too difficult, too anything to be included. Family isn't about convenience. It's about showing up, speaking up, and sometimes standing your ground. 3 months have passed since that Thanksgiving. Things aren't perfect, family never is, but they're better. James calls more often. Emily has started bringing the kids over every other Sunday. Diane asked for my stuffing recipe, and I've been officially put in charge of carving duties for all future family gatherings. As for Tommy, he proudly tells everyone how his grandpa crashed Thanksgiving and saved the day. Kids understand more than we give them credit for. They know when something isn't right, even if they can't explain why. So if you're watching this and feeling pushed aside, remember, you matter. Your place at the table matters. And sometimes you have to show up uninvited to remind everyone of that fact. The most powerful thing I've realized? Sometimes it takes a 6-year-old's tears to reveal the truth that adults are too uncomfortable to face. "Grandpa, they said you're too old for Thanksgiving and can't come anymore." Those innocent words changed everything, and gave me the courage to change it back. The chair at the family table that I built 40 years ago is waiting for me next Thanksgiving. And every Thanksgiving after that for as long as I'm around to sit in it. That's a promise I made to myself, to Martha's memory, and to a little boy who couldn't understand why anyone would think his grandpa was too old for turkey and stuffing and family. After all, isn't that what Thanksgiving is really about? Not the food or the football games, but the simple, profound gift of being together. Every generation, every branch of the family tree, sharing the same space, the same meal, the same traditions. Too old for Thanksgiving? There's no such thing, and I made sure my family will never forget it.